REI Co-op presents a perfect outdoor moment with the perfect gift. Picture this. You're ripping with your favorite person. Bluebird skies, blower powder, and frankly, you're skiing like legends.
So sick. Another lap?
Thanks to REI's curation, from lid to sticks, you nailed the gift.
No way. How'd you know?
Does it get more perfect than that? Give without guessing. Shop in store or visit rei.com.
This podcast is part of E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience.
Hello and welcome to War Horses, the only college equestrian podcast that will give you gingerbread house decorating tips. I'm your host, Auburn Elvis. Let's talk about some college equestrian. We are well into the season. We're in between week 6 and week 7, so let's take a look back into the past with some meet recaps. The first meet we want to look at, South Dakota State at UT Martin. The predicted score in this was UT Martin 12, South Dakota State 8. Let's see what really happened. In fences, UT Martin won that 4-1. On the flat, they won that one 4-1. In horsemanship, UT Martin won that 3-2, and in reining, they won 4-1. That made the final score, UT Martin 15, South Dakota State 5. So yeah, big day for the Skyhawks. They took no prisoners against the Jackrabbits, and both teams would have to turn right around and ride again later this weekend. So, moving right along, South Dakota State versus South Carolina. So this one was a neutral site meet at UT Martin. This was a 4-on-4 meet. In the predictions, I think I predicted this one to be South Carolina 12, South Dakota State 7. Let's see what really happened. In fences, South Carolina won that 3-1. On the flat, South Carolina won that 3-1. In horsemanship, South Carolina took that one 4-0. And in reining, it was 2-1 for South Carolina. That made the final score. South Carolina a whopping 12 to South Dakota State's 3. So this was a pretty easy win for the Gamecocks. Like I said, it was a 4-on-4 meet, so we weren't going to see the point explosion that maybe the stats was looking for. Yeah, it was kind of one-sided. The Jackrabbits did get a couple of points, but good job to those riders. But again, South Carolina is just a good team. So there you go. Next meet to look at, Fresno State at Baylor. Okay, the predicted score in this one was Fresno State 14, Baylor 6. Let's see what really happened. In fences, Baylor won that 4-1. On the flat, Baylor dominated. They swept it 5-0. In horsemanship, Fresno State did come back. They got a dirty sweep, 4-0. And then in reining, Baylor took that one 3-0. So that made the final score, Baylor 12, Fresno State 5. So this was a big, big home win for Baylor. The stats, obviously, they had Fresno State favored, but the Bears showed up at home, had used that home advantage, and won almost every event. Now, Fresno State did get the sweep in horsemanship, so they can be proud of that. But other than that, it was Baylor's day. So, yeah. But this doesn't hurt Fresno State that much, especially in the Big 12 standings. You're going to see a lot of these where one team will dominate when they're at home, and then it'll be the reverse of that when they go on the road. So, yeah, a little unexpected, but not too unexpected. Next meet to look at, Auburn at TCU. Okay, so all the Auburn fans listening, if you remember, last week the predicted score was Auburn 11, TCU 7. Let's see what really happened. In the first half, the first event was fences. Auburn won that 4-1. Reining was going on in the Western Ring. TCU swept that. Well, had a dirty sweep, really dirty sweep, 3-0. So there were 2 ties in that, making the halftime score 4-4. But in the second half, Auburn just took over. The Tigers won the flat 4-1, and they won horsemanship 4-1 as well. That made the final score Auburn 12, TCU 6. So this was a very big road win for Auburn. If you remember, they had that 10-10 tiebreaker win at SMU the week before. So now the Tigers have the 2 best road victories in the country. For TCU, this kind of stings. They were tied at halftime, but Auburn just dominated in the second half, particularly in the flat. And that's an area that can be up and down for Auburn. So that day it was up, and that spelled defeat for the Frogs. But again, for TCU, this is a non-conference loss, so this isn't going to hurt them in the Big 12 race. But for Auburn, they've got to be really excited about this because there are not a lot of teams who could go into TCU and get the win. And there might be a team coming next week that maybe could do it, but we'll see how that goes. And we'll talk about that later. Our next meet to look at is a single discipline meet, Sweetbriar at Bridgewater. Now, the predicted score in this one was Bridgewater 6, Sweetbriar 4, largely on the strength of being at home. Let's see what really happened. The meet started out with the flat. That went 3-2 for Sweetbriar. All right, so you're thinking, okay, Sweetbriar's got this. But in the second half, the Eagles came back. They won fences 3-2. That tied the meet up, and it forced a tiebreaker in which Bridgewater won 775 to 769. So Bridgewater ends up with the 5-5 tie, but tiebreaker victory. Big home win for Bridgewater. I mean, there was a time when they would have been thrilled just to get a couple of points from Sweetbriar, even at home. And this victory shows how far that the program has come, for them. For the Vixens, these road losses are tough, but they are still one of the top teams in the country. But we're seeing that gap between them and the next tier. It is narrowing. So yeah, this is evidence of that. We have another single discipline meet to look at, College of Charleston at Dartmouth. The predicted score in this one was Dartmouth 6, College of Charleston 4. Let's see what really happened. Now, oh man, and at the time I'm going to air with this, didn't have the meet results or the individual event results. We know that Dartmouth won 7-3, so that's kind of close to what we expected. Don't know exactly how the numbers fell out in the individual events, but that's a solid home win for Dartmouth. And again, Charleston, they did okay on the road, but, being on the road's hard. And then we have one final meet to look at from last week, which was College of Charleston at Sacred Heart. So the predicted score in this one was 7-3 in favor of Sacred Heart. Let's see what really happened. In fences, College of Charleston won that 3-2. On the flat, Sacred Heart came back and they won that 3-2. That made the final score 5-5, and the tiebreaker goes in favor of Sacred Heart, 812 to 790 for Charleston. And that gave the win to the Pioneers. So big home victory for them. Even if it came by tiebreaker, you really want to win at home, and this shows that, at home at least, they can get a critical win. For Charleston, not a great weekend, but you go on the road and sometimes you're going to lose everything on the road. But they kept it competitive, particularly in this one. So yeah, I think still this isn't a terrible result for the Cougars. All right, with those meets out of the way, let's take a look at the impact they had on this week's official Auburn Elvis College Equestrian Rankings. We're going to do the dual discipline rankings first. All right, number 1 is Georgia. The Bulldogs remain at number 1 on the strength of their undefeated 4-0 record. Now, they haven't really been tested on the road yet, but I'm still okay with keeping them at number 1. Number 2 is Auburn. I did consider moving Auburn back up to number 1 after that convincing road win at TCU this week. The Tigers, like I said, they now have the country's 2 most impressive road wins, and they're 3-1 overall, with that one loss coming at Texas A&M in that 10-10 tiebreaker. So Auburn probably should be number 1, but because Georgia is technically still undefeated, we're going to keep Auburn at number 2 for right now. We're going to see how Georgia does when they go on the road. Number 3 is South Carolina. The Gamecocks look very strong at UT Martin this week. They're 5-1 overall, with their lone loss coming at Georgia. So they're the number 3 team in the nation. Number 4 is Texas A&M. The Aggies continue their home winning streak with just a smackdown of Fresno State. They're 3-1 with their only loss coming at South Carolina. Number 5 is Oklahoma State. The Cowgirls are 1-1, winning at home over SMU and losing at TCU. They have not ridden a lot so far, but everything we've seen suggests that they're going to be in the hunt for another Big 12 title and a contender for the national title as well. Number 6 is Fresno State. The Bulldogs took another tough road loss this week, but they are riding well at home. They're 2-2 overall, and they're going to take a couple of weeks off, and then they're going to get ready to host Oklahoma State. Number 7 is SMU. The Mustangs have had a rough start. They've gone 0-3 so far, but other than that 10-10 home loss to Auburn, the 2 road losses were kind of expected. And really, even at 0-3, SMU's total margin of defeat is just by 5 points. When you add up all of those losses, they've only total just giving up a margin of 5 points. A lot of teams lose by 5 points or more in just a single meet, and here SMU's, it takes 3 meets for them to do that. So they've been very competitive in every meet. Now they're going to be idle one more week, and then they're going to get ready for Texas A&M at home in 2 weeks. So we'll see how they do in that one. Now the number 8 team is TCU. I dropped the Horned Frogs below SMU, even though TCU has a better record at 2-3, and that's really more about SMU than it is about TCU. SMU has an impressive margin of defeat that we just talked about, whereas TCU has a much more common margin of what you would expect in their losses. In their 3 losses, they've lost by 6, 4, and 6 points. So even though they have a better record than SMU, it's likely that a lot of that has to do with the scheduling and where those meets are taking place, more so than them just being demonstratively better than SMU. But if this really bothers you, just wait a week. TCU is about to host Georgia, and if they do better against Georgia than they did against Auburn or something like that, then I might pop them back up. Number 9 is Delaware State. The Hornets were idle this week. Their record is 1-0, and I'm going to keep them here for now, even though some other teams around them were active. None of those teams have really done anything unexpectedly outstanding, so I'm going to leave Delaware State at number 9 for right now. And the number 10 team is Baylor. The Bears had a big home win over Fresno State. They are 1-3 with all 3 losses coming on the road. I thought about moving them further up, but I think number 10 is a good place for them and their record right now. And even though that is all of the top 10, I do want to give a shout out to UT Martin, who had a good weekend at home against South Dakota State. The Skyhawks weren't able to beat South Carolina at home, but they defended their home turf against their conference rivals. Now let's look at the single discipline rankings. Number 1 is Lynchburg. They're 4-0, and to me, the Hornets are the undisputed number 1. They have the best record, and they have looked good doing it. Number 2 is Dartmouth. They're 2-0. The Green are right behind Lynchburg right now, mostly because they haven't ridden very much, but they are also perfect, and they hold the number 2 spot for that. Number 3 is Sacred Heart. The Pioneers have started their season with a bang. They're 2-0. Now, a lot of that is due to them riding at home, but 2-0 is still not, you can't sneeze at that. So that gets them the number 3 spot right now. And number 4 is Sweetbriar. The Vixens dropped down to number 4, more because of how the other teams are doing than any issue with Sweetbriar. The Vixens have taken a pair of road losses early, but they should bounce back once they get some of these teams traveling to Sweetbriar. It just won't happen for a little while. Number 5 is College of Charleston. They are 2-3, and the Cougars are in a similar boat as Sweetbriar. Going out on the road has gotten them some losses, but the more they ride, those losses should even out. And number 6 is Bridgewater. They are 2-1, but some of their record is due to them riding at home. Bridgewater is a good team regardless of where they're riding. In most years, that win over Sweetbriar would have just sent them climbing up in the rankings, but we have a bit of a log jam of teams above them, so Bridgewater, even though you beat Sweetbriar, you're staying in the same ranking position of number 6. It's not fair, but that's just kind of how the sport works, with riding at home being such a big advantage. The number 7 team is Swanee. They are 0-3. The Tigers have not started off very well, but they're going to get more chances to show their worth as the season goes on. Number 8 is Berry College. They're 0-2. The Vikings do look better this season, but it just hasn't translated into wins yet. They're hosting Bridgewater later this month, and that'll be their chance to show that they can challenge a more established team. Number 9 is Centenary University.
It's a twister! It's a twister!
They're 0-6, but the Cyclones have ridden more meets than anyone. They're still searching for that first win, but I really like how fearless they are in scheduling these teams, and eventually that's going to show up in the score sheet. So keep at it, Cyclones. Now, with the rankings out of the way, let's look into the future with some meet previews. Before we go into these, I think it's important just to stress a couple of trends that always seem to happen in the sport. So I just want to sort of touch base with any new listeners who might be joining. The first is just how big of an advantage riding at home is in these meets. It is not uncommon for two teams to trade home and home victories and for the margin of victory to be 4, 5, 6 points in each meet. So just because your team won by 6 points at home, it doesn't mean that they would do the same thing on the road. In fact, they likely would not do the same thing on the road and might not even win at all. Another trend that you want to be aware of, and this particularly relates to the stats and the favorites, is that many of the brand new riders are now getting to the point to where they've ridden enough that their stats will be given the same weight as the more experienced riders when it comes down to who's the favorite in these matchups. So, for example, if you're a rider and you only have 2 rides, you might have won both of those, so you'd have 100% winning percentage. And let's say you're going up against a rider who's ridden 30 times and maybe she wins half the time. Well, I weight the record of the rider with only 2 rides much less reliably than the other rider who has 30 rides. And so when we do the prediction of the matchups, so far this season, those riders with not a lot of rides, they're not getting the full weight of whatever their winning percentage is. But we are getting to the point in the season where a lot of those riders have now ridden enough that we can kind of take what their winning percentage is and we can weight it at the same level as the more experienced riders. So that means there may be some corrections going on in teams that weren't as favored in the past. Now they're going to be more heavily favored because some of those younger riders, I'm now giving them full credit for the work that they've done. So keep that in mind as we look ahead to this week's meets. Now our first meet to look at is a single discipline meet, Sweetbriar at Lynchburg. The stats project that being at home, Lynchburg is going to have the advantages that they're probably going to win fences 3-2 and they're probably going to win flat 3-2. That would make the final score Lynchburg 6, Sweetbriar 4. Again, the Hornets are undefeated. They're at home, so it kind of tracks that they would be the favorite. They may even win by more. We'll just see how this goes. Next meet to look at, Bridgewater at Centenary. The stats favor Bridgewater 3-2 in fences, and it favors Bridgewater 3-2 on the flat. So even though this is at Centenary, the stats really like Bridgewater. So the final score would be Bridgewater 6, Centenary 4. We'll see if this ends up being that way. Again, sometimes these home teams just do so well that they really surprise you, but we'll see how this goes. Next meet to look at, UC Davis at Delaware State. In the stats, the projections are UC Davis winning fences 3-2. UC Davis winning flat 3-2. Horsemanship going to Delaware State 4-1, and UC Davis winning reining 3-2. If you add all of that up, that gives you a 10-10 tie, and I would expect that the home team would have a little bit of a advantage in the tiebreaker, so we'll give this one as a win to Delaware State 10-10. And actually, I think this is kind of interesting. I would think Delaware State would be favored by more, but UC Davis, they match up well, I guess, in the stats. We'll see how it goes when the meet gets here. Our next meet to look at, Georgia at TCU. All right, so the Bulldogs are going out to Texas, kind of like Auburn just did. They're going to have a pair of Texas teams. Let's see what the projections are. Fences would go to Georgia 4-1. Flat would go to TCU 3-2. Horsemanship would go to TCU 4-1, and reining would go to Georgia 3-2. Add all that up, that's another 10-10 draw. And I'm going to take the home team, TCU, with a tiebreaker win. So yeah, the stats think this will be very close, but again, I give the nod to the home team, TCU, when there's a tiebreaker. Next meet to look at, Baylor at Oklahoma State. In fences, Oklahoma State is projected to win 3-2. In flat, Baylor is projected to win 3-2. In horsemanship, Oklahoma State is projected to sweep 5-0. And in reining, Oklahoma State is predicted to win 4-1. Add all that up, and that would be an Oklahoma State win 14-6 over Baylor. So yeah, the Bears rode well at home, but Oklahoma State, man, they're good at home. This is going to be challenging for Baylor. This might even be more one-sided than that. So we'll see how this goes. Next meet, this will be of interest to most of my listeners, South Carolina at Auburn. Looking at the stats, fences is projected to go 4-1 to Auburn. The flat is projected to go 3-2 for South Carolina. Horsemanship is predicted to go 4-1 for Auburn, and reining is predicted to go 4-1 for Auburn. Add all that up, that would be Auburn winning 14 to South Carolina 6. Now, Auburn is always tough at home, and the stats kind of reflect that. An 8-point margin of victory is a lot, but Auburn has done this to a lot of teams at home, so we'll see. The next meet is a neutral site meet, UT Martin versus UC Davis. In fences, UT Martin is predicted to win 3-1. In flat, UC Davis is predicted to win 3-1. In horsemanship, UT Martin is predicted to win 3-1. And in reining, UT Martin is predicted to win 3-1. Again, this is a 4-on-4 meet, most likely. So that final score, if everything goes that way, would be UT Martin 12, UC Davis 6. Now, this one's a little interesting. I would have figured that UC Davis would have done a little bit better in the stats, especially consider how they did on the first meet that they were at. But sometimes the stats do this, so Skyhawks by 6, I guess. Another meet with UT Martin, this time facing the host team at Delaware State. In the stats, it predicts fences to go 4-1 for UT Martin, flat to go 3-2 for UT Martin, horsemanship to go 3-2 for Delaware State, and reining to be 4-1 decision for UT Martin. Add all that up, it would be UT Martin winning over the home team 11-7. Now, this meet's a little closer than the other one, but again, the stats just love UT Martin, so Skyhawks by 5. Next, we have Georgia at Texas A&M. So this is a big one in the SEC. In the projections, the stats like Georgia to win fences 3-2. The stats like Georgia to win the flat 3-2. The stats say that horsemanship will likely be a 2-2 toss-up. And the stats say that in reining, Georgia would win 3-2. So if all that happens, it would be Georgia winning 11-8 over Texas A&M. Now, I'll say I'm a little surprised at this projection. Remember that Georgia was projected to barely lose at TCU, but here they're going to win by a few points at Texas A&M. And we saw Auburn visit these two teams and have almost an opposite result from that. So, maybe there are some matchups here, advantages that Georgia has against A&M that they just don't have at TCU against TCU. But again, we'll see if this projection turns out to be accurate. And our final meet to look at is Sacred Heart at Dartmouth. The stats say that Dartmouth will win fences 4-1 and that Sacred Heart would win flat 3-2. Add that up, and that is a 6-4 win for Dartmouth. Now, this meet's going to tell us a lot about these two teams. Neither of them ride against Lynchburg or Sweetbriar, I don't think. So we're going to get at least a good idea of how they match up against one another. I kind of think Dartmouth is going to get more than 6, but who knows? Okay, so with final thoughts to talk about here, and I kind of alluded to this in the intro, I want to veer off into a silly tangent this time, and this one is really just for the riders who listen to the show. We just had Halloween. Most of y'all did the thing where you dressed up or you carved pumpkins and your SIDs. They took pictures and made all kinds of videos and put them on social media, and it was just great. So now let's think about what y'all are probably going to be doing for Christmas, okay? So at Auburn, most years, the athletic department will do a competition among the various fall sports and have a couple of athletes from each of the sports put together and decorate a gingerbread house. And most of them are just complete disasters, which is kind of the point, but it's technically a competition, and even if the football team does tend to win every year just because of how popular their sport is, but every once in a while, some athletes from some other sport will do such a good job decorating that they'll get a ton of votes. So I am here to help out any of you equestrian riders with some advice on decorating the best gingerbread houses. So basically just be prepared, all right? Everyone else is going to show up the day of for their time slot, and they're just going to throw together a mishmash of icing and sprinkles. That's hundreds and thousands for all you English listeners to the podcast. And their houses are just going to look terrible, okay? But yours does not have to. First advice, bring a hairdryer, okay? Not your good hairdryer, but like your backup hairdryer or maybe your number 3 hairdryer. And I know you have one. So take that with you to the competition. And the reason for that is because you're going to be standing there, you're going to be holding together 2 pieces of this house, you're going to be waiting for the icing to dry, and it's just going to take forever. But if you have a hairdryer, you can heat that stuff up and you can get it to dry a lot quicker. And it's going to look a lot better because stuff isn't going to slide around or fall or droop or anything like that. Now, don't worry about not being allowed to use it because these SIDs, they are not there to enforce rules on this thing, okay? They just want to have good footage to use in the social media post later. So if you show up with your own tools, then this is going to play very, very well. Trust me. And yes, bring your own tools. Bring an X-Acto knife or a box cutter so you can trim stuff down with. Or if you even have your own cake decorations, bring those too. Maybe Maybe you want to add stained glass windows to your gingerbread house. So you bring your own fruit roll-ups and you cut those out into little stained glass windows. Or bring your own pretzel sticks and glue together some pretzel horses with some icing. Okay? Do not be afraid to show up like 5 times more prepared than any other team. Okay? And lastly, and this is the most important advice, and it's not to have fun. Okay? Fun is for losers. Okay? The most important piece of advice is to decorate the sections of the house before you assemble the house. Now, maybe you've heard of this thing called gravity. Well, gravity is the mortal enemy of gingerbread houses. And every year, these dumb jocks, they put together these houses and then they try to slap layer after layer of heavy icing on a vertical surface. And that just ain't gonna work. So instead, lay that wall of that house down on the table, decorate the heck out of it, then use your hairdryer to dry the icing, and then assemble the house together after you got all the pieces decorated, okay? You got to think about these things because representing the sport of equestrian and defeating all the other sports in a gingerbread house decorating contest is the true meaning of Christmas. So I hope this helps. Well, that's all for this episode. I'm your host, Auburn Elvis. Thank you very much for listening, and war horses.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the E2C Network. On your way out, I want to remind you to stop by e2cnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for all our content across our podcast, YouTube channel, and much more. To stay up to date with us, make sure you're following social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. While our content here may always be Auburn sports heavy, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. War Eagle.